What is up, and welcome to the Red and Bold Show. We're excited to have you. Excited to be here talking 49ers football as we prepare for the rookies to take the field this coming weekend. So excited to see what all goes on there. I am your host, Marc Adams. You can find me at 49ers Camelot. I'm joined by my co-host, the great, the one and only, Anthony Robertson. You can find him at 49ers Cutback. Ant, how are you doing, my friend?
I am doing great. And it's an interesting time because the draft is over and there's kind of like a lot of conversation about the draft picks, and there was a fever pitch surrounding the 49ers about where they took players, but now it's kind of just getting into how these players are going to fit the team. 49ers have buku bucks when it comes to salary cap, and there's a lot of optimism and rookie minicamp, like you said, this weekend. So that's exciting. Players are going to be on the field. We're going to hear conversations about those players, and so I think it's an interesting time. It's a fun time, and just around the corner, that schedule is going to get released as well. So it's kind of a fun time for NFL fans, and the NFL does a really good job of keeping it going. But I'm excited about talking 49ers because I think there's a lot of really cool things going on still, even though here we are after the draft and it should be somewhat of a dead period. It's really not.
Yeah, and we're recording this live on Wednesday, May the 6th. And I believe that tomorrow, Thursday, is when the rookies report. And then Friday and Saturday, the 8th and the 9th, is when they're on the field. So hoping to hear some different reports on some good things. And it's always a lot of fun when you get to like rookie mini camps, and then the team has mini camps, and then they have OTAs and all that stuff. And it's always fun, always exciting to hear, especially from rookies, new players, to kind of see how they're going to fit into the team this year.
Yeah, this is usually the time too where people start having their favorite, right? Their favorite rookie or their favorite undrafted free agent. And you start hearing fever pitch about, hey, this guy's going to make the team. This guy should make the team. And it's always interesting because a lot of the times those guys don't make it. And then everyone says, hey, what is going on? This guy should have made the team. This guy's great. So I always think it's interesting to see how these players perform and the conversations that the coaches have about them, because there is going to be somebody that's going to become everyone's favorite. And I'm always curious who that's going to be and if they deserve to be everyone's favorite. And I do like a lot of the guys that are coming out. 49ers are going to have, the 8 rookie draft class, but 8 undrafted free agents as well. Lots of guys coming in for tryouts. So I think that's interesting as well. You get these guys that come in for tryouts. Who's going to make the team as far as the 90-man roster to come to training camp? It's an exciting time, especially for young guys who are getting to experience NFL football for the first time.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about those undrafted rookies here in just a minute. First, I wanted to bring up something that I haven't really heard a whole lot of people talking about, and maybe it's because it's no big deal. But I heard recently, I think it was Dieter Kurtenbach. I am not 100% sure. I should have written this down. But I think it was Dieter who said that he seems pretty well connected, okay? He said that in later rounds during the draft, the 49ers allow position coaches to make decisions on who they're going to draft. Now, I don't know if he meant legitimately choosing the player, or if they're just having input. If they're having input, that's no big deal. That's happened for years. I mean, we all remember hearing Mike Singletary standing on the table for the 49ers to draft Patrick Willis. And so that's nothing new. But this is actually the second time that I've heard that the 49ers allow position coaches to make decisions like that late in the draft. Have you heard those things? And whether you have or not, is that a big deal? Is this something that other NFL teams are doing? Or is this, because really in the later rounds is where they draft the best.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that exact thought that the assistant coaches are the ones who end up making the final decision. And I would push back a little bit on that. I think that when you look at the scouts and the local scouts, those are the guys who are the area scouts are going to be the ones who really are pitching players. I think when you get a scout and a coach together, that's when you start getting some movement. You can remember Brock Purdy. That's what it was. It was a scout.
Right.
It was Brian Griese. And they looked at it and they said, hey, you know what? This is a guy that we want. And I think one of the clearest pictures you can get on the 49ers are looking for consensus, and it's not just a position coach, would be them talking about Jacob Cowing and how they couldn't get anything for an agreement. If it was just a position coach deciding, it would have been a done deal, right? But in that situation, they said they went all the way down to the wire, and John and Kyle were still saying, hey, who's for this guy? Who's for that guy? And it came down, and they finally decided to go Jacob Cowing. But we know that the coaches do have input on who the 49ers ultimately select, because these guys cutting up the films, they're giving it to Kyle Shanahan as guys that they really like. And then Kyle's looking at it and, kind of giving his opinion as well. But it starts with the scouting department. They're doing all the work. They're the ones who are giving the players that they think the 49ers coaching staff is going to like. They're giving them the film, and they're saying, hey, look, here's who these guys are. Now let us know. And then you kind of just work through it together. And when you get consensus where the scout likes them, the coach likes them, then Kyle and John like them, that's when you usually get guys the 49ers are targeting. So it's a whole process. Everyone works together. And I do know that, you're going to have position coaches that like certain players, but ultimately we know that Kyle and John are going to end up making the final decision on that, on anything. I just think they lean more into the scouts and the assistant coaches together when they get into those later rounds. And really those later rounds have worked out well for the 49ers. So the scouts know these guys the best, and you got to kind of rely on them because they're not the guys you see in the top 100 that are a little bit easier to figure out, who, what, when, where. But those other guys who are going to be those hidden gems, you got to rely on the guys who are with them all the time that see them play game in and game out. And I think that's what they do.
Yeah, and I think that's a much better explanation of how things likely go. I just found it interesting, and maybe I misunderstood, or maybe Dieter miscommunicated, but I just found it really unlikely that the 49ers would say, okay, Bobby Wagner, you get to decide the next pick. That just didn't seem likely, but I just wanted your thoughts on it. And here we are with this situation. We still don't know, and we may never know. Maybe someday when a book is written about this regime, maybe then we'll know, but we still don't know who makes the decisions. I mean, John Lynch is taking a lot of heat right now. When I've seen that, there have been a couple of times that I've replied and said, do you really think that John Lynch is making the decisions? Because I think that Kyle Shanahan's the one, especially the offensive players. Kyle Shanahan is making those calls. And so, it just kind of brings back the whole thing, in 2021 that the rumors were that Kyle wanted Mac Jones, and then they drafted Trey Lance. And was that Kyle changing his mind, or was that Kyle being talked into Trey Lance? I don't know if we're going to know for years how that all plays out, but make no mistake, when it comes to offense, Kyle Shanahan is definitely the one making the call.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I mean, the thing is his offense. He knows who fits within his offense the best. He knows what he wants to do with those players. And, I don't know if I believe that Kyle Shanahan can be talked into anything. Kyle Shanahan is kind of bullish about what he wants. And, I think he saw an opportunity to get a Josh Allen type player with Trey Lance. That's who he thought he was going to be. And that's why he went for it. He said, hey, let's go with the upside over, the sure thing, which would have been Mac Jones, which would have been a consistent starter. But he wanted more than that. He wanted more than Jimmy Garoppolo. He wanted somebody that could take the game and change it if he needed to. He wants that guy that when things break down, they can make plays. They have the rocket arm. And, that's hard to find. And so you got to find somebody that can process things extremely well. I think that's why Brock Purdy made so much sense. And good thing Brian Griese and, the scouts were looking at him. But I think you're right. Kyle Shanahan, when it comes to offense, I think he signs off wholeheartedly on all these. I think when it comes to positions like offensive line, he probably very much leans into Chris Foerster because Chris Foerster's been around him and Kyle Shanahan, Mike Shanahan's system for so long that he has a really good feel on what he can coach up. And I think there's value there with position coaches, especially position coaches that have been a part of evaluating process for a long time and have done a good job. He can trust those guys. But when it comes to wide receivers and, and positions like that, that's Kyle. Bobby Turner's going to handle your running backs. And so he's got a core group that he trusts, and they're making the selections for offense. And then I think on defense, that's where John Lynch has a lot more say on the draft picks. And then I think they also lean into the defensive coordinator. But for the most part, I think John handles defense, Kyle handles offense. But make no mistake, Kyle signs off on, I think, everything. I think they come to an agreement on everyone. But I don't think Kyle was the one saying, hey, let's take Solomon Thomas in 2017. I think he wanted a defensive lineman. I don't know if it was that defensive lineman. I think that's where you kind of see the difference between a John Lynch pick and a Kyle Shanahan pick. Kyle wants, defensive line, but he lets John pick which defensive lineman that is.
In 2024, you and I were talking almost weekly that the 49ers looked slow, especially on defense. Last year, we saw it again, that there was just a contrast between this team and some teams like the Seahawks, the Rams, where the 49ers just looked slower than the team that they were playing. With this offseason and with this draft, do you think the 49ers have gotten faster?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you look at the additions that they've made, especially in the wide receiver room, Jawan Jennings isn't the fastest guy. And I think that was your starting X. And they, of course, wanted it to be Brandon Ayuk, but, everything happened with that. And he's got the necessary speed to make things work. But I do think that there's been an investment in that. Even Kalen Black, he's a 4.4 guy at running back. That's plenty fast enough in the NFL. But you look at the wide receiver room, and they add Dezon Stribling, and that's to go with guys they have at the back end of the roster that are all 4.3 guys, like Jacob Cowing and Jordan Watkins, but a guy that can push it vertically down the field with Mike Evans. Now, that's offensively. I think the clearer picture of how you got faster is on defense. You add in Romello Height, who's going to be a speed edge player, and I think you look at that 4.6 speed, and I think he plays faster than 4.6 when you watch him, rushing the passer. That was number one. Grayson Halton, super fast, 4.8 defensive tackle. There's a lot of speed there. You look at Dre Greenlaw coming back into the fold. There's a lot of speed added to that room as well at linebacker. They got him. They added another linebacker. Plus, they got Nick Martin, who they got last year. So I would say they have added speed. I don't know if it's as significant as maybe everyone's hoping, but make no mistake, when you watch this offensive defense in 2026, it will be faster than it was, because I didn't even mention Christian Kirk, but that once again, another guy who's displayed speed so far in his career. And I think that was a point of emphasis for the 49ers to get faster on offense and defense, to be able to compete with the likes of the Rams and Seahawks, who really do fly around. Jared Verse, Byron Young on that Rams defensive line, Braden Fisk even. That's the kind of speed that they want, and I think that they're starting to get there.
In the chat, Jermaine M says, I hope the 49ers end up cutting both Junior Bergen and Jacob Cowing for the two undrafted free agent wide receivers. We'll get to those two undrafted receivers here in a minute. Junior Bergen's not going to make the team. Jacob Cowing, this is an interesting one because I don't know where he is going to stand. But the interesting thing is that we just talked about speed. He's one of their faster guys on offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you look at Jacob Cowing at the end of this roster, I think that they've had a lot of high hopes for him. And him and Jordan Watkins are kind of in similar situations where both of them are mid-round picks. So the 49ers have made an investment. Both of them are 4.3 guys, but they're different as far as position. Jordan Watkins, he plays more of an X wide receiver. So he's kind of the same position as Stribling and Mike Evans. Will that push him down on the depth chart a little bit? I don't know. Where Cowing is more of the Z, the slot. He kind of plays those roles. So you've got two different kinds of players, but they're both going to be at the end of the roster and expected to make an impact using their speed. And a lot of that's going to go into what they do on special teams. But the good news is you talk about probably the bottom three wide receivers for the 49ers. When you look at the young guys, Stribling, Cowing, Watkins, all 4.3 guys. 49ers haven't had vertical threats like that consistently. Can these guys pan out? I think is the biggest question. But yeah, that's going to be interesting to watch. Jacob Cowing and Jordan Watkins, who can do the best on special teams and make this roster potentially as a 6 wide receiver.
Kali Young in the chat said the speed player I see getting cut is Garindo. And yeah, I mean, that's very possible.
Yeah, I think right now when you look at the running back room, I started seeing some of the conversation about Garindo being on the outs. I think right now he's in the mix because, right, Patrick Taylor is solid, but if you've got Jordan James and you've got Kalen Black and they're doing a pretty good job, you might not need Patrick Taylor. It's going to come down to special teams again. And I think that that's one of the keys. But make no mistake, Garendo's speed is still the great neutralizer and why they would like him on this team. You don't just have players in this league that are 6 foot, 220 pounds that run a 4.3 40. Like, they don't exist. I think he was the first one to do that at the combine since DK Metcalf. So remember that about his athleticism. But I do think that some of these veterans are going to push him a little bit. And so he's going to have to step up. But that's what we all hope, right? Hopefully, when he saw the Kalen Black pick, he didn't go, oh, man, I need to get out of here. He said, I need to get in. I need to prove that I'm the better running back. Hopefully, that's the attitude we get from Isaac Garendo. But I wouldn't count him out yet. But I do think that he is on the bubble right now to make this roster.
Logan Carruthers in the chat mentioned Nick Martin as one of the fast players. Hopefully he can contribute this season. 404 error page not found. I love that name. That gets me every time. So the speed that knows where it's going, Dre Greenlaw. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. As far as as long as Greenlaw can stay healthy, he's going to make a difference with this team. So let's talk undrafted rookie free agents. I'm going to name each one, and hopefully we can decide are they going to make the team? Are they going to be practice squad, or are they just completely out and have no chance? So, and I doubt that we're going to have any of those because all of these guys have a shot at making it. So mainly let's focus on who's going to make the team, who's going to make the practice squad, or if there's one that you're like, nah, he's not going to make either. So the first is edge out of Indiana, Mikhail Kamar. A lot of people really like this pickup. What do you think about Kamar?
Yeah, I really like him. I think that when you look at his production, especially what he did in 2024, his first year at Indiana, he had 10 sacks. That was when he was playing with CJ West. I'm guessing the 49ers are the most familiar with him from scouting CJ West. And it's funny, CJ West at one point said, which player would he love to come play with him? It was Mikhail Kamara. So I like him. There's nothing about his traits that are going to scream, this dude is a top player in the NFL, right? He's 6 foot. He's 250 pounds. His arms aren't really super long. He's not super fast. He ran a 4.9 40. But there's something about him. The way that he rushes the passer, he's effective. And you look at what he did as far as pressures, and a lot of people say, hey, he only had 2 sacks, but he had over 50 pressures in 2025 for Indiana, and he was getting a lot of focus of the offense. I think he's an interesting one. I think the problem for him is it's a stacked defensive end room when you look at who's ahead of him, right? Nick Bosa, and you've got, Mikael Williams and Keon White and Sam Okuwanu, and now Romello Heighton. It's like, where do you find a spot? They normally would keep 5. I think Kamara's best chance to make this team is if Mikael Williams isn't available early on in the season, that maybe he could beat out Cam Sample. But I think Sample's actually an investment just in case Mikael Williams isn't ready to go and they have a little bit more depth behind Okuwanu. So I think it's really tough. I like the player a lot. I'm just not finding the avenue for him to make it, barring an injury. But I hope I'm wrong, because if he could display what he did at Indiana in San Francisco, I do think he could be an impact player. And I see him as a guy that is Sam Okuwanu-esque with a little bit more upside when it comes to pass rush. So I wouldn't mind him eventually replacing Okuwanu, who's on a 1-year deal for $3.5 million. I kind of like that makeup. He fits that role, but he's a little bit more talented.
Yeah, he probably has more upside. And because of that, I think if there's no injury, maybe he's a practice squad guy, but he might be one of those guys that they're really invested in making sure that they keep. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. One player that I'm intrigued by is tight end Khalil Dinkins out of Penn State. The 49ers need help at tight end. George Kittle thinks that he could be back by week 1. I don't see how. I mean, if he does, then he's some kind of Iron Man, because he just had this injury, January. So I just don't see how he's going to get back. But I'm not going to count out Kittle. That said, they need help. Do you see Dinkins as somebody that can make it? or is he more of a practice squad guy? Is this a blocking tight end? Is he a receiving tight end? What do you see here?
I mean, he's been used primarily as a blocking tight end, and he blocks really well. So the 49ers always have room for that. I think he showed some receiving ability, but that wasn't something he was asked to do a lot of. So he's a guy that's going to be a projection. But I do think he's in the mix. And you bring up George Kittle. I think there's a chance George Kittle starts the season on the PUP list. And, it's probably going to be one of those famous quotes where Kyle Shanahan's like, sometimes you have to protect the player from themselves. And I think that George Kittle coming back that quickly would be amazing. I never want to count out George Kittle and what he's capable of doing. But I do think that there's an avenue for a tight end to make the team. Now, I think one of the tough parts about this is the 49ers, how are they going to work out their roster gymnastics? They've got to potentially keep a third quarterback this year, which means they've got to, do you keep one less offensive lineman? Do you keep one less tight end? I think there's a chance they keep one less tight end on the initial 53-man roster, keep Tonjes, keep Farrell. And then what does that mean for Dinkins? Well, probably a practice squad role in which they could elevate him. I think this is his chance to beat out Braden Willis. And I think there's a chance that he can, because I do believe he's a better blocker than Braden Willis. They did give him $275,000. And as a guarantee, I know a lot of people read into that is like, oh, they're going to make this roster. But a lot of that money goes into what they do on the practice squad. They know they're going to pay those guys like Evan Anderson to be on the practice squad. They did that a couple years ago. So I think Dinkins is probably more likely to end up on the 49ers practice squad, but I like the potential that he has. I mean, watching what he did at Penn State, the blocking is definitely there, and he could develop into the next Luke Farrell. I'm saying he blocks better than Farrell. At least I think he's going to eventually, but it is a harsh adjustment for tight ends to go from college to the NFL. He might need a year to kind of get in line. 49ers might not be done at tight end. If they think George Kittle is going to be out for a while, they might need to go after a free agent tight end to come in and step in. I think that you got a guy, Jake Tonjes, that could do a good job, but I think you might need more depth at the position.
Yeah, living up to Luke Farrell, I don't think that's a real high standard, because the blocking tight end that they signed last offseason is not very good at blocking.
Yeah, it didn't work out with Farrell. I mean, they're looking for Charlie Warner. That's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Charlie Warner is a phenomenal blocker, and Atlanta uses him, pretty well. But there's not very many Charlie Warners out there. Those guys that can just really, really block their butts off. And that's part of what they're missing out on the edge when it comes to the run game. Part of the reason they needed to get speed, because they're not as good at tight end blocking. I think they invested in Luke Farrell thinking he was going to be a little bit better than he is. And now, they're trying to find somebody else, and the undrafted route is not a bad idea, because I do think Dinkins has talent.
Next one is wide receiver out of Notre Dame, Will Pauling. I see that William Roberts in the chat says that Will Pauling is going to make the team. What say you?
I don't know if Will Pauling is going to make the team. I will say he's a fun watch. Watching what he did at Notre Dame, I think he's a talented player. He can create in the open field. I mean, he made a lot of catches in college. He had over 1,700 yards, 15 touchdowns. I think that Pauling is going to be one of those guys that people fall in love with from the undrafted free agent market. I just look at this wide receiver room, and I think it's really tough. So Pauling is going to have to add in special teams. That's going to be the question. Can he handle punts? Can he handle kickoff return? That's going to be the avenue. Jacob Cowing has the best advantage because he's been in this offense for 2 years, followed by what you're going to get from Jordan Watkins. I think those guys have a advantage over one of these guys coming in. But I do think Pauling potentially sticks around. He could be a practice squad guy, but I would be surprised if he made the 53. Now, if he goes out and he shows out, hey, I'm all for it. But I didn't see a guy that I thought was going to be able to beat out Cowing and Jordan Watkins, at least initially.
Yeah, the other one he mentioned is wide receiver Wesley Grimes from NC State. Another one that, because of that fairly stacked wide receiver room, is going to have a tough time making it.
Yeah, Wesley Grimes is a fun player too. I like the way he moves. His route running is really smooth. I think the question with Grimes is going to be the speed. He is not, fast like the other guys that the 49ers have at the end of the roster. So he gives me kind of Tay Martin vibes, as far as like, this is a guy that operates well in space, can get open, can catch the ball well, can run good routes. just does he have the ability to threaten a cornerback? What's he going to do when he gets out there and Ephesians Prysock is all over him? The tarantula is all over him with those long arms, able to get on him. So that's going to be the question mark. And I think that that's one of the things we start hearing about rookie minicamp, hopefully, is how those matchups are coming. But if he had a little extra gear, I would say Wesley Grimes would be a fun player that had a chance to make this team. But I'm worried about the speed and how it works out. But he is a smooth route runner. And I think that that's at least something that could get him near the practice squad. We'll see. Him and Will Pauling, I think, are both in the mix for that practice squad spot.
Yeah, and Johnny Dell's in the chat with us here live. So welcome.
What's
Johnny?
up, Johnny?
Hey, y'all go check him out, because when it comes to breaking down film, there's guys like Ant and John Chapman who are elite, and Johnny Dell's one of those guys. So go check him out. Love listening to him. The next one on the list is defensive tackle James Thompson out of Illinois. Yeah, John Lynch really likes. I mean, he's all about the defensive line. He's made, defensive tackle was his focus last year. This year, it's been a little bit more on the edge. What do you think about James Thompson? Is this a guy that could potentially make the team, or is this more of a practice squad guy?
I think the defensive tackle room has room for somebody to kind of step in. I think when you look at it, you've got a couple of guys that are in the mix for that fifth defensive tackle spot. And you talk about Evan Anderson, right? Sebastian Valdez. Those guys are in the mix. Both of them a little bit different. One, Evan Anderson, more the run stopper, the one tech. And then you've got Valdez, who's more the penetrator, the three tech. What do the 49ers normally do? They normally like to have a penetrator. I think Valdez has the foot, ahead of everybody else. But I think that you look at James Thompson, and he's a big physical guy. I mean, this dude is going to tower above a lot of the interior defensive linemen that the 49ers have. Alfred Collins is going to be the one guy bigger than him. So you got a guy with a lot of size, and I think that he can be a penetrator, disruptor. He plays pretty well against the run as well. The question is, can he keep his pad level low? A lot of times when you get these taller defensive tackles, that's always the question. That was the problem, with guys like Javon Kinlaw. That's been a little bit of a problem with Alfred Collins last year. And I think that's what James Thompson has struggles with as well, getting that pad level a little bit high. But if he can come in and he can play consistent and play down low the way that Chris Kasarik likes his defensive tackles to play, I think he's in the mix. And there is a fifth defensive tackle spot up for grabs that I think that, these guys who kind of came in are going to have an opportunity. So I think Thompson's in the mix. He is behind the eight ball because you do have a couple of guys that are there. And I think Sebastian Valdez is probably a little bit ahead of everybody for that spot, especially on what he did in the practice squad last year. But I wouldn't count out James Thompson. I think when you look at the physical gifts, he's there. He was also guaranteed $280,000 on his contract. So they think highly of him, and they wanted to do something to make sure he came to San Francisco.
So if they do keep 5, then you're talking Grayson Halton, CJ West, the Alfred Collins, and then he's got 2 shots to make it over who?
We got Osa Odigizua too.
Oh yeah, Osa, yeah, obviously he's making it. Evan Anderson, and who did you mention?
Sebastian Valdez.
Yeah, Sebastian Valdez. So he's got 1 shot to make it over those 2. It's going to be interesting. I think that, man, I don't know. Do you think he's going to make it? I mean, it's so early. It's just way too early to tell, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, if he came in, Mark, and he was playing low and playing, like a guy that was penetrating, I think he's got a shot because he's a little bit more physically gifted than Sebastian Valdez when you're talking length and stuff like that. Valdez, though, is the guy that outworks everybody. I mean, this dude is in the gym. He goes out there and he gives maximum effort. The one thing I can say about everybody the 49ers brought in, draft picks and undrafted free agents, they're all effort guys. Mm-hmm. But you're going to have to give everything you got to outwork Sebastian Valdez. That's his calling card. And so I think that if he could do that, if he could match his intensity and keep his pad level low, he's in the mix. But yeah, it's going to be tough. I think Evan Anderson is actually a guy that we could see slip completely off this team, even off the practice squad, with the addition of James Thompson and others as undrafted free agents. I think if James Thompson doesn't make the practice squad or make the team, they'll want him on the practice squad. The question will be, is he going to be one of those guys that's poached? Because he does show the upside to be able to play in the NFL.
Yeah, and how many guys can they protect on that? Is it just one?
They can, once they get to the practice squad, they can protect 4. But the problem is getting them there. Everyone who gets released, everyone who gets waived, and that's everyone without, believe it's 3 accrued seasons, they have to pass through waivers. So when you get these vested veterans, that's why a lot of times the 49ers would cut a vested veteran and sign them a day later because they didn't want to lose one of these guys that would pass through waivers. So everyone's up for grabs, especially these undrafted free agents and rookies. If you waive them, they could get claimed by another team.
Yeah, Collie Young said the defensive line is deep, and that's a good thing because we've seen how this defense can play when they have a deep defensive line. The 49ers signed another defensive tackle, Bryson Eason out of Tennessee, and I saw that Joe Carmack in the chat said Bryson Eason is going to make the team. What do you say?
You know what? I really like Bryson Eason. I think of the two, I like him a little bit more than James Thompson. I like them both, but for me, something about Eason, I think that he's going to be a little bit of a problem, for opposing offensive lines. I think he's bigger. Believe it or not, when it comes to weight, he's a little bit bigger than James Thompson. So I think he's another guy that can penetrate, can get in the backfield and make plays. I think he holds up pretty well against the run. I think when you look at Eason and Thompson, those guys both have a shot at that 5th spot. And I think it's going to be open competition. I like the fact that they're going to have 4 legitimate options to be that 5th guy. And what are they looking for? Well, they're looking for a guy that can penetrate and hold up against the run good enough. Last year, they had Kevin Givens in that 5th spot. And Kevin Givens is a good penetrator, but he wasn't able to hold up against the run. So I think they're looking for a guy that's kind of universal. He could play 1 tech. He could play 3 tech. And I think that's why Thompson and Eason have an advantage over a guy like Evan Anderson who can't play 3 tech. And so that's what they're looking for, versatile defensive tackles. And I think that they got some good options. I like Bryson Eason a lot. Just in his time in Tennessee, he had 4.5 sacks. So he didn't produce a lot of sacks, same with James Thompson, but they've showed the ability to wreck shop in the backfield occasionally. So you're hoping you're going to be able to maximize what they can do. I still say that these guys are more likely to be practice squad guys than 53-man guys. But I like the opportunity for these guys to make the team.
William Roberts likes Eason as well. Johnny Dell said Eason was another Senior Bowl guy. And Johnny does a lot of work on that. In fact, if you haven't seen the stuff that he's been doing on Kalen Black, go check that out. You can go on X. You can find him here on YouTube as well. I wrote an article. I don't know if you saw the article over the weekend, but just a little bit of trying to just give a little bit of optimism on why Kalen Black may not be as horrible of a pick as everybody's saying. And I saw some stuff from Johnny Dell after that as well. And so really think that, I mean, he's not going to be the guy that's going to carry the offense, if McCaffrey goes down, but definitely can be a solid number 2, I think. So excited to see what he can do. Back to the undrafted free agents. Sorry, I chased a rabbit there. Finally, a safety, Jalen Stroman from Notre Dame. Could this be the answer to my prayers to get Jair Brown out of the starting lineup, or is there just no way?
I don't think so. I don't think Stroman is a starter right now in the NFL. I mean, he is a box safety. I think that he's going to play around the line of scrimmage. He's pretty solid. I was definitely a fan of what I saw on film. He'll step up in the hole. He'll fill. A pretty good tackler out on the edge. I don't think that he shows the necessary ability to play, a single high safety role consistently in the NFL. I think he could do it in spot play, but I think that this guy reminds me more of a replacement or a backup, I should say, for Malik Mustafa. I think that they're going to give him a chance to compete, but I think your 3 guys that are up for the starting spot are still Jair Brown, Marquis Siegel, and Malik Mustafa. And, I hope Stroman surprises me. I hope he comes out there and is a little bit more athletic than I've seen on film and is able to cover that deep third effectively. Because I think that they really could use a little bit more depth of the position, but it's also tough for a safety to make this roster when you look at the fact that the 49ers kind of park a guy in Saran Neal as that 4th safety on their roster. That way they have some ability to keep extra cornerbacks. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen with Stroman, but I thought he was a fun player. I thought this was a good signing. Let's see what he can do. I think he's got a real good shot at making the 49ers practice squad. They have some other guys there that they like as well. Guys like Derek Canteen and others who were undrafted free agents last year that they're going to be expecting to come in. And Canteen had some corner ability as well. So I think that he's in the mix, but I don't know. Even though that it looks like safety is a position of need, I'm not sure it's the easiest way to get on this team is by playing safety and being a box safety, kind of in the mold of, Jair Brown and Malik Mustafa. I think Marquis Siegel's got the most upside with coverage.
Joe Carmack in the chat said, I heard ESPN complain the way the Niners draft to the, maybe he meant compare, the way the Niners draft to the Belichick Patriots. Hey, that wouldn't be a bad thing. Johnny Dell said, Shanahan loves those 2023 third-round picks. Hang on to Latu for an extra year. Hung on to Moody and well past the expiration. And then Jair Brown. So, yeah, what a horrible, horrible draft. The last undrafted free agent that I want to get your take on is the punter, Jack Bowmeister out of Texas. Just as John Chapman hates OU players, but will root for them when they're in San Francisco, so I hate Texas, but will root for them when they play for the 49ers. What do you think about this punter? Any chance that he makes the team, or is this just going to be one that they stash on the practice squad?
I don't think he would be on the practice squad. I think he's either going to make this team or he'll just be not around. But I think he's in the mix. I think when you look at, Corliss Waitman, the one advantage that Corliss Waitman, I think, has, is the fact that he's a left-footed kicker. But I think that you look at these guys, I think it's going to be an open competition. I think they're looking for a potential young punter. We knew the special teams, coach was out there meeting with punters and even some kickers. And I think that they were taking a look around. They were making a change from what they had last year. And so I think Bowmeister is going to be in the competition. I think this thing's going to be open. I really do. I think it's going to come down to, who can be the most consistent. Both guys, pretty close to around 44 yards per average. Bowmeister 43.5. So I think it's going to be who can be consistent, who can kind of give a little bit of extra hang time to help this coverage team. That's going to be the guy that gets it. But I don't think the 49ers are really worried about potentially having a rookie punter. I think rookie punters is a lot easier to swallow than a rookie kicker.
Yeah.
And so I think that also another thing to take into account, this is going to be a huge factor, who can hold the best for Eddie Pinheiro, because that was something you didn't have to worry about last year. And that's a big thing the 49ers look at. So we know that they have often decided to go with a certain guy because he's a good holder.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Joe Carmack said that statement that I read about ESPN, that it was a compliment, what they were saying, which is strange. ESPN complimenting the 49ers. That's very weird. We talked about the rookie minicamp being this weekend. So I want to ask you this, as a fan, what do you want to hear? As a coach, what are you hoping to see?
Yeah, I think it's two different things. I think as a fan, you're always hoping to hear that these guys are showing up and showing out, and everyone's excited about what they're going to do, right? That Kalen Black is looking faster than they ever even thought. Deshaun Stribling is going to be, the next big thing at wide receiver. I think Grayson Halton, that he's going to be, we're hoping to hear that these guys are just studs, right? We're hoping to hear that Deommodore Lenoir, video that came out when he had rookie minicamp where he just absolutely stuffed the wide receiver and threw him down. Like, those are the things as a fan. I think as a coach, all you're looking for is that you think somebody has put in the work during the offseason. You see it in their body. You see it in their footwork. You see it in the way that they're approaching the game. That is what you're looking for as a coach. You're not really expecting them to go out and show you anything. You're just mainly hoping that they're going to come in with, a good body, and then they're able to move consistently. I think as time goes on, you'll expect consistency when you get to, mini camp. They've got some room to go here. The rookie mini camp, then OTAs, then they're going to have that, the full mini camp. And I think that's where you want to see some of the things that you learn in the classroom come out. That's when you're going to start taking a bigger look. And then what do they do for those days away before training camp? And how do they come back? Do they look better than they looked at rookie mini camp? It's all a process, but you're not expecting a whole lot. I think Robert Saleh and what he said in Tennessee is real. You don't want these guys going out there and overworking, doing too much. Just get them in, make sure they're doing things to take care of their body, make sure they're doing things as far as proper footwork and working on technique, and the rest of it you'll take care of in training camp. But those are the things, the easy stuff. Show up on time, do what you're supposed to do as a coach. That's all you're asking for. You're not asking for too much. We don't need you to be Superman. We don't need you to be, if you're Dinkins, you're not George Kittle. Don't be George Kittle right now. Just be the best Dinkins you can be.
They kind of ease them in, right? Because as rookies, you're always afraid that they're going to come in and try to impress too early and maybe overdo it and end up with some little injury. So are they holding them back more in the rookie mini camp, or are they holding them back more when they actually show up to some of the veteran activities?
I think right now you're easing them in anyways. I know you got guys who are going all out because they're trying out. But I think when you look at the draft picks and stuff like that, you're kind of easing them in, and you're saying you want to get some good reps. You want to get some guys who go full speed because you want to see what you're working with, what you need to work on, but you're keeping those reps limited. So you're going to have some easy reps, some medium reps, some hard reps, but you're not going full force the whole time. Like, that's just not smart. They will test their endurance. They're going to see where they're at. So they'll probably do some drills and sprints and things like that to test it because they want to see where they need to go. Because a lot of this is get these guys in, let strength and conditioning look at them and see, hey, these are the things you need to do. Let's take a look at what you're doing as far as you're eating, get everything in order. So that when you come back for training camp, eventually you're going to be where we need you to be. And for coaches, it's like, get an easy look at their footwork, running routes, just if you're linebacker, what are you doing? Cornerbacks, how are you handling rolling over, playing against these wide receivers? You're just taking little notes and then you're giving them things to work on. But for the most part, yeah, you're letting them ease in because you do not want them to get hurt right now. You want them to be healthy through your OTA process where you can ramp it up a little bit. Mini camp, we know that they'll do a hard day, but for the most part, it's going to be pretty easy. And then when you get to training camp, then that's when you really turn up the volume on what these guys are going to be doing.
Yeah. Joe Carmack in the chat asks, so is Van Noy really Fred's brother? So if you didn't hear, Kyle Van Noy said that he wants to play for the 49ers. He likes what the 49ers doing, and he wants to play with his little brother, Fred Warner. But I don't think they're biologically related. I think he was just saying my little bro kind of thing.
Yeah, believe it or not, I have some background on Van Noy. His dad, because Van Noy was adopted, actually. His dad used to work in the city where I live in Lodi, and he was actually over the flag football program when I played when I was like 7 years old. So I know his dad, Lane Van Noy, a little bit. My dad knew him really well, and I worked with his aunt at the school district where I used to work. So we have history with Van Noy. He is not related to Fred Warner, but he is. He's talking about him as a teammate. His little brother. He was a little, older than Fred Warner when he was at BYU. I know that he wants to play around here. I know that he's wanted to in the past. In fact, I had heard about it. That's why I did a video about it years ago. So I think that he would be intrigued by the 49ers, but I don't know. I don't even know if the 49ers have room for Kyle Van Noy, but I'm a huge fan of what he does on the field. I think a couple years ago, what he did for Baltimore kind of kept everyone like, hey, Van Noy can still go. I think a lot of people thought his career was kind of tapering off, but here we are 12 years into his career and he's still successful. So yeah, I think he could be successful for a team. I just don't know, barring an injury, if the 49ers would bring him in.
So if they did sign another veteran edge rusher, would you want it to be the family friend Kyle Van Noy, or would you want it to be Joey Bosa? Which is why this came up, because they were talking, I think he was on with Kay Adams maybe, and they were talking about the Bosa brothers potentially playing together or something. I think that was the conversation that was going on. So which one would you be interested in?
I think it depends on how you plan on using them. If you're Raheem Morris, if you're looking for more of a 3-4 outside linebacker, I think you go with Kyle Van Noy. That's something we've seen him do with the Patriots and with Baltimore, where he's not just a guy that puts his hand in the ground. But if you're looking for a guy that's going to, at this point in his career, play the run really well and get after the quarterback, I would go after Joey Bosa with the 49ers wide 9 at what they do there. So I think that it's not really two guys that do exactly the same thing. They're a little bit different. The one thing I like about both of them, extreme intelligence. So you're adding guys who understand complexities of offense. They're going to be able to be in the right spots at the right time. So I know both of those guys would be intriguing. I do think that Van Noy would be a lot cheaper than Joey Bosa. I don't see Van Noy going, double-digit salaried. I think Bosa wants to be $13-14 million. And I think part of the reason you have to pay him a little bit more, guess what? California taxes, they're going to take a lot more of that money. So I think that that's a big part of why Joey Bosa wants a little bit more. I don't know if the 49ers are still in on it, but I think Kyle Van Noy made it sound like the 49ers were still in on Joey Bosa, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, and they have all this salary cap room, and so people are expecting them to use it. But I think that David Lombardi made a really good point yesterday when he posted that the next year they're going to be really up against the salary cap. In fact, they're going to be near the bottom in salary cap space. So he believes that the salary cap that they're building now is really more just to move it over, carry it over to next year. And I think that's probably the most likely reason that they're doing this. William Roberts asks in the chat, do you think we should bring in Cam Jordan since he is still producing?
I like Cam Jordan. I think Cam Jordan's one of those guys that's a little bit late, a little bit long in the tooth when you're talking about an NFL player, but he's still been productive. And so, yeah, if you're looking for a base defensive end that could step in and play, and I think the big question comes down to Mikael Williams. If Mikael Williams is going to start on the PUP list, like some have suggested, you might want to have a defensive end that could step in and play initially as a starter. I think that if Mikael Williams is going to be ready for week 1, then you probably don't have to worry about that, because then Sam Okuwanu and Keon White, those guys are legitimate backups on base downs. You have Romello Height to rush the passer as a designated pass rusher, so I don't think you worry about it. But that Mikael Williams one is the one that really makes everyone think. If he's going to miss the first 4 games at least, potentially, then you look at a guy like Cam Jordan or Joey Bosa or Kyle Van Noy, because then you could start them and then keep Sam Okuwanu as part of that Bravo group. I don't think you want Sam Okuwanu starting. And I like Sam Okuwanu. I think he's a really good depth piece for the 49ers. But I think that just knowing that you have somebody else that's been a little bit better, and I think Cam Jordan's been terrific in his career, they've all produced more. They've all had more than 5. Sam Okuwanu's best season, he had 3.5 sacks. You need more production from a starting defensive end. And I think that Cam Jordan, Joey Bosa, Van Noy, even Jadeveon Clowney, all those guys would provide that while playing the run pretty well. So I think that's when you get to that decision. And I think the 49ers are still looking. They have the financial freedom. I think you're right. Lombardi, I think, is right. They want to roll a lot of this money over to next year because they got a lot of things that they got to do over the next couple of years. Sustainability is one of the keys, but they do have some wiggle room now to get a couple guys maybe. And then they also want to be available at the trade deadline to be able to go ahead and trade for someone if they need to.
Charles in the chat said, I'd like to see San Francisco trade Pearsall and Cowing for George Pickens. Will the 49ers trade after dealing with Brandon Ayuk, would they trade for George Pickens? I know Jerry Jones likes trading with the 49ers. I don't know. Maybe he would take on Pearsall and Cowing for Pickens, but man, I just don't know that they would do it because of what they just dealt with Ayuk.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to trade for Pickens. I think it would take a lot to get George Pickens from Dallas Cowboys. I don't think it would be Pearsall and Cowing. I think they're going to want at least one first-round pick next year in 2027, and we know how valuable 2027 first-round picks, extremely valuable. So I don't think, I do think Kyle Shanahan liked Pickens. I think he was interested in getting him in a Brandon Ayuk trade that they were discussing. We know Pittsburgh didn't really want to move Pickens at the time. I don't see this as a possibility. I think Pickens will be in Dallas this year, probably play on his franchise tag. But I mean, the tremendous value. George Pickens is a tremendous player. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I just I mean, he was fine for the Cowboys as far as being on his best behavior. I think he was a little bit distracting in Pittsburgh, but great season last year with Cowboys. I definitely would take that production. But yeah, I think that you're right with Pearsall and Cowing are not going to be enough. And as good as this draft is going to be next year, they're not going to want to surrender picks to get somebody, even a player like George Pickens.
Yeah, because then you have to pay George Pickens as well. And you just went through, all the financial constraints of Brandon Ayuk and what that meant. And if you're giving away a first round pick, you're paying George Pickens top dollar. What does that mean? $45+ million a year? I don't think that that's financially feasible. You just got a really good contract with Mike Evans. I think they're pretty locked into what they have at wide receiver, minus, somebody else, that's more of a role player. I think that there's role players that they could potentially add if they wanted to invest at wide receiver. Maybe they don't feel Cowing and Watkins are going to end up being that guy. But I think for the most part, I think they feel like wide receiver is pretty set going into 2026.
All right. Anything else you want to? Actually, I've got a few more questions in here. Just real quick, let's see if we can get these. Are there any other free agent wide receivers that the 49ers can sign? I mean, they've already brought in 2 veterans and drafted one, so I kind of doubt it. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the only way they would is if they felt it was someone that could help them and kick and punt return beyond Jacob Cowing and Jordan Watkins. I think barring an injury, I think they're done in the wide receiver market unless it's somebody they think puts them over the top. And how many guys who are out there available are going to put the 49ers over the top? I can think of one guy potentially that would do that. That would be Tyreek Hill. That's the only other guy that I could think. I just don't think they're going to invest, $20 million in a wide receiver like Tyreek Hill at this point, especially coming off the injury that he had.
That was from a 49ers fan, by the way. GOC 1230 asked, does Van Noy or Jordan have better injury histories than Joey Bosa? That would be my tiebreaker. Sign whoever has been healthier.
Well, I mean, both guys were pretty healthy last year. Joey Bosa, I believe, played 15 games, and Van Noy played 15 games. So both of them did a pretty good job last year. Last year, Joey Bosa was more productive. He had 5 sacks. He created 6 fumbles, and Van Noy had 2 sacks. But Van Noy also just recently had a double-digit sack season. So I think it just comes down to who you feel fits the best in the role that they're going to be playing. And I think that that's going to be the question. Role plus money equal the player that you get. So I think that that's going to be the biggest part of it. I think both of them have figured out the injuries for the most part.
Kali Young asks, what about Njoku? We need a tight end.
I would love for them to sign David Njoku. The fact he's out there, he's taking meetings. He met with the Chargers on Monday. I think when you're looking for a complete tight end, he is it. I think if you knew that George Kittle wasn't going to be available for a significant portion of the season, it would be a great idea to go with David Njoku. He could slide into the George Kittle role early. Then you got Jake Tonjes playing his normal role, and then Luke Farrell being that kind of blocking tight end. But Njoku's a guy that's capable of being a receiving tight end and a blocking tight end. He is a dual threat. And then when George Kittle came back, you could move on from Luke Farrell if you decided to, and Kittle and David Njoku would be a tremendous 1-2 punch. I think that would be a huge upgrade, but are you going to be willing to pay what he's looking for? Market value, $6.8 million. That's how much they would save from cutting Brandon Ayuk after June 1. So they could literally take that money and put it in David Njoku if they wanted to. We'll see. I think that he is a interesting name still out there. Lots of value in free agent market. If you look at the free agents still available, there's a ton of guys still available at almost every position.
I think I'd rather them make that move than one of those edge guys. I just think that especially with the George Kittle situation. A 49ers fan asks, how about offensive tackle or guard still available?
I think the biggest name when you look at the offensive guard would have to be Joel Bitonio. We know that one's got a lot of conversation because of what he could do. He could step in day one at left guard and be your starter. He's been in a similar system playing for Kevin Stefanski up in Cleveland. So I think that would be a plug and play attitude. He's late in his career, so he's looking to win a Super Bowl. I think that would make sense. The problem is, from everything I've heard, he's wanting over $10 million a year. And no one's really going to be willing to pay that for an older offensive lineman. And, the 49ers haven't been willing to pay a offensive guard that kind of money. Laken Tomlinson moved on. Aaron Banks moved on. So they haven't found value in that. So I don't think they would pay that. Now, if his number came down and all of a sudden it was like $5 million, I think the 49ers would definitely be in on Joel Bitonio. And then they could just move on for Robert Jones. Bitonio could start, and then they would eventually develop Carver Willis or Connor Kobe to be the eventual replacement for him when he retired, probably next year or the year after.
Mr. Sweden, sorry if I mispronounced that, asked how many pressures or sacks did Kevin Givens have last year? Four pressures.
Yeah. I mean, they basically just decided that Kevin Givens wasn't the answer, mainly because Kevin Givens couldn't provide anything in the run game. So Givens was never the same. I think that it was actually the 2024 season when he hurt his pectoral muscle. After that, he injured it again in training camp last year. He just never was the same. So Kevin Givens was not a productive member of the team. That was never going to be a part of my argument. I just meant that part of that fifth spot was Kevin Givens because of the type of player he was supposed to be. So yeah, I mean, Kevin Givens wasn't productive in 2024 or 2025 and was a liability against the run. That's why they're looking for somebody that's going to be a little bit better against the run, but can still provide a pass rush element, which he hasn't done since 2023.
Hugh Wilkins, 33, asked for thoughts on the Penn State undrafted free agent. That's Khalil Dinkins out of Penn State, beating out Farrell. We talked about that you thought that there was a chance that could happen.
Yeah, there's a chance. I think that you look at the 49ers investment in Farrell, and that I think that they're still going to probably go with Farrell, but Dinkins has got to go in there and block his butt off. And I think if he proves himself as a blocker, and I don't care about the pass catching, which he has the ability to do so, if he becomes an all-world blocker, he has a real good shot of beating out Luke Farrell, because that's the one thing we talked about Charlie Warner earlier. The 49ers value that from the tight end position. So I think that is something. Now, the problem is a rookie tight end has a huge transition going from college to the NFL. It is extremely difficult to pick up all the moves, all the things you got to do within the system. So it's going to be a mental thing for Dinkins first, less than a physical thing. But if I was him, I'd focus completely on blocking. I think that's his best way to make this team.
Yeah, that's that would be great. And I echo Logan Carruthers in the chat said, please beat out Farrell, dog. So I would love to see somebody beat out Luke Farrell, but they have to be an upgrade. So, I mean, as bad as we thought Luke Farrell was, right now he's the best one that they have outside of George Kittle as far as blocking. So, hey, that's all that we have. Thank you for joining us. If you wouldn't mind, take just a moment and like this video, subscribe to both channels. We appreciate it. That helps us out. And so look for news. There's going to be news this weekend from the rookie minicamp. Not a ton of it, but there will be some. So look for that. And hopefully we'll be back next week to talk about what we heard and saw. We may even start doing some way too early roster decisions here. So we'll figure that out sometime before next week. So thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.